Yeah, I know. I hadn't made any videos in a long time. But I finally finished my chicken coop. Probably make a video about that. The reason why I hadn't made any videos is not only because I've been busy, but also because I had nothing to say. What else is there to say, really? I mean, I guess we could gossip about the current events, talk about the election, but the current goings on, but ultimately, I don't really care about any of that. Some of it is interesting here and there, somewhat fun to talk about, but most of it is really just depressing, man. Social media, social distancing, synonyms. Soon will be, if not yet. One and the same to me, really. Social this, social that. Socialism. YouTube's been putting, I noticed at least in one of my videos, some subliminal messaging. Pretty creepy. It was weird because the text or speech to text recognition software, whatever, you could say it's buggy, you could say blah blah blah. It was saying some weird shit on my video. So I was saying this boxer's name, right? Different channel. It's really not that important. But I was saying Teofimo is the guy's name, right? That's exactly what I would say. Teofimo got beat up in the fight or busted up or something like that. And the subtitles would read something along the lines, tell a female she got busted or he got busted up, something, female got busted up, basically. Stuff like that. FEMA. There was lots of FEMA in there, and there was some other really creepy shit that you guys wouldn't understand unless you're a boxing fan, and you're out of context anyway. But it was pretty rich and kind of crazy. But yeah, I don't really have much to say, so I guess I'm just gonna ramble a little bit. Females. I guess there's been somewhat of a carnivorish cat fight here on YouTube. I couldn't give two shits about the details. They're both wrong in my opinion for making the private public, but that's socialism. But no offense to Tuesday. All the best to her, you know what I mean? But that girl ain't right. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then it's whatever, man. I mean no harm, but I've been thinking a lot lately about degeneracy. It's everywhere, right? We could talk about these two cat fighting, manipulating one another. And again, I don't know the details, and I don't give a shit about the details, so don't even comment about any of that. But whatever, do what you will. But knowing what I know about social media and knowing what I know about the average female on social media, at least with the channel, I guarantee you there's manipulation going on. They're being catty, they're bullshitting, and they're taking vicious shots at one another, overtly or not so much. That's a given. But again, I don't care. The reason why I'm talking about chicks fighting is because I've been looking at some fights lately. For those of you who follow me on my boxing channel, you know that. I'm talking about the fight game, and I got subtitles talking about women getting beat up, and we got women's boxing is supposedly growing. It's one of them things they're pushing down people's throats, really promoting it, trying to not even make it marketable, just trying to have you accept the programming. I don't support women's boxing. I think it's degenerate. Just as Tuesday with her foul mouth, and I'm a foul mouth, right? And I don't mean to escape that criticism, you know what I mean? But I still believe that there's something about a woman swearing and the way she does it. Not her specifically, but sometimes the way women do it, the context in which they do it, and how vicious they are with their cuss words directed at other people. It's really something else. In and of itself, a woman cussing, to me, is a sign of degeneracy, and you could say that about men to a certain degree too, I suppose. But then the way in which they do it and how they really mean to hurt your feelings, yeah, it's even more so, I would say. But the thing with at least my generation, and I guess that would be Generation X, Y, and Z, and then what? Right? And then what? I guess we'll see. But the thing about us, at least growing up in America, in a city, urban, maybe even suburban America, the inner city, we were degenerate, right? We would do a lot of bad shit, but we knew we were degenerate. So we'd go out bombing at night, graffiti. We smoke weed in public, right? We go to the store and steal cans because you're just a kid and spray paint's expensive. This type of stuff, right? We did a lot of bad shit, but we knew we were degenerates. We understood that. You know what I mean? We would wear our hip-hop, whatever the fuck you want to call it, urban army cadet. You know how old this hat is? 2 decades probably. But that was our style, right? We would bend the brim, we would put our hoodie on, we would hunch over, we would lurk around corners, right? Bob and weave through traffic. We were always trying to hide. As angsty as we were as kids, we knew we were bad, and there was a certain amount of shame there, which is why I believe we hid in these various ways, if only, I don't know, allegorically or whatever. The kids these days, not only did they straighten out the brim, right, they're more open now. And by the way, that's a Chicago South Side gang thing. That's where I saw it back in like 91, 92. That the new era had that style. For me, where I saw it first, where it comes from me, is this little Chicago South Side gang. You know, you got these kids running around today with their new era hats, all colorful, their tight-ass pants, some of them, and their pink shoes, right? They're ostentatious. Bragging about smoking weed. I mean, we thought we were cool if we did some shit like that, right? But you didn't really want to brag about it. People in the know, they knew who went out at night and destroyed public-private property, but it wasn't something you bragged about. People just knew. We even though we did bad things. You want to lose your head? You just might. We still had a certain amount of shame, and we hid, right? These kids today, they got no shame, man. They show their ass any chance they got. Men too, right? With them tight ass pants, pink shoes. Just look at camouflage, right? We would go to thrift stores, for example, or army surplus stores, and we would buy the army cadet hats and camo, and that was our style, right? We were trying to blend in. Nowadays, if these kids are rocking camo, it's like pink and neon green and that type of shit. The all over print, if that's what it's called. I'm not too hip with all that new shit, and that's probably old by now anyway. But that was like evolution of urban camo, basically, right? Look at me, complete another antithesis coming out from somewhere else, and action reaction, I guess. I hope I'm making sense to some of you. I'm a little bit out of practice, and I told you I would ramble in this video, but that was my generation, and they seem to have, kids these days, they brag about everything, being rowdy, drinking all kinds of weird shit, doing all kinds of drugs, right? Showing their ass on OnlyFans. Like, they just brag about everything. They got no shame. We were degenerate, right? We were bad, but we knew we were bad. These kids are even worse, and they think that they're good. And I'm not trying to point a finger, because I understand how we contributed to this, right? Like, I was talking to someone, I think, or he was talking on some live stream somewhere, and he's talking about BBC degeneracy, how the BBC has become this and that, and how it's just awful with all the PEDO stuff and so on and so forth, right? Completely leftist, brainwashed, racist, all that other shit. Yeah. And then he pointed to Benny Hill, saying how that used to be real legit and just funny. No, that was degenerate. Benny Hill was a degenerate. That show was a degenerate fucking show that treated women like property, sexual objects, and nothing else. And that's the problem with the political spectrum and political game theory, like that video that I talked about, where I talked about progressivism and conservatism, how ultimately when you add the two together, you still have a progressive system, because progressivism pushes forward and conservatism instantiates the changes, right? Let's just preserve what we got, basically. And this ties in with this whole idea of this saying that if you're young and not a Democrat, you don't have a heart, but if you're older and not a Republican, you don't have a brain, right? It's like we are all degenerate at some point. We contribute to degeneracy. We are degenerate. We push degeneracy, and then we wake up and we say, "Oh shit, that's not right." But instead of regressing, right, going back to where we were, we become conservative, and we just shit on this new progressivism, not realizing that we were that too when we were younger, right? So even though I'm attacking the younger generation, you could say, I'm also taking responsibility and saying and telling you how everything has progressed. Basically, right? We're all degenerates. There we go. Title, topic of the video. I really had no idea. I had some idea what I was going to talk about, but I wasn't sure. So, women didn't swear as much. And maybe a certain amount of swearing is okay, right? But like, where does it end? Right? When do we wake up and stop being so degenerate? Right? Putting bodies on display is cool to a certain degree, but it's like, when does this, like, where's the line? Right? There is no line. I mean, I had no idea anyone would ever want to look at Vegan Gaines' wife's asshole. Why? For what reason? But it's all the rage, I guess. It gotta be some kind of rage, man. So we're all degenerates basically, and what we do is point a finger at someone who's more degenerate than us, not realizing that, well, we gave him a pretty soundly degenerate, if that makes any sense, base to work from, work with, right? We provided a certain example, and they just took it a step further, because ultimately our system, our culture is progressive. It's just that a lot of us wake up, and not only do we perhaps wake up too late, but we still get trapped in this conservatism instead of calling ourselves and being regressive, right? And it's this funny trick they play on us, saying, associating regressivism with progressivism, right? For a while, I don't know if they still use this term, but leftists would be progressive regressive, right? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Which is it, right? They're so progressive, they've gone full circle and devolved back into, cavemen or something like that. Culturally speaking, no, it doesn't make any sense. You're either progressive, conservative, which is the middle, or you're regressive, which is far right. Because society's been moving in the direction of less and less freedom, individual freedom, taking away those freedoms, to restore these freedoms, you got to be regressive. To be conservative is to say, well, it's to accept the status quo. Basically, that's all that is, conservatism. It just works out to be this way. So, here's an example, since boxing and cat fights has been on my mind lately. And, YouTube's obliging with their subliminal programming. Boxing is degenerate, right? The sport of boxing. It's a certain kind of degeneracy. I mean, these men go in that ring and they destroy each other. Sometimes they die. A lot of them end up with complications, and they destroy their lives, a lot of them. I would say for most boxers out there, overwhelming majority of them, they come out the game worse off than they were. Even though they may have like brief periods of whatever, money, fame, success. That's really a tiny, tiny percentage of them anyway. So, to put two men in the ring looking to literally kill each other, well, that's pretty degenerate behavior, right? But we support it, we're into it. But once we accept that, and I enjoy boxing, right? It is what it is. I'm a degenerate. But now they're doing the same with women. They've been pushing women's boxing forever. It took forever to catch on. It kind of looks like it might. I mean, they're just going to keep brainwashing people, and it'll happen. And it seems to be growing like fucking cancer or something. So now you have, and a lot of these, especially the top ladies, like, they're really good looking, and it shouldn't matter, but you kind of see the degeneracy, right? Because you see this beautiful woman step into the ring, and by the time the fight's over, she's ugly, right? And these beautiful women accumulate scar tissue, facial damage, busted up ears. You got these beautiful women that, not all of them, but eventually, if only temporarily, like, they get busted up. They become busted. So that in and of itself is a degeneracy. But where women's boxing is going to lead to is, in this current climate, is men beating up on women on TV and everybody cheering, right? That's what it's going to lead to, is transgenderism, all these transvestites, right? Little by little, we accept boxing as a certain degeneracy. And maybe this sort of degeneracy always existed and it was channeled in a certain way. And maybe that was okay if it stopped there, because, for example, well, maybe it's better. Not to say that you couldn't start with fixing the underlying issues there, but ultimately, you could say it's better that some of these men, instead of beating on each other in the streets, they do it in some kind of a controlled environment and get paid for it. I guess you could say that's better. Okay, cool. So we accepted that, but now the same thing is happening to women, right? Because I guess there's fewer jobs going around. The economy is shit, and it's a dog eat dog, bitch eat bitch world out there, right? So now you're seeing these professional cat fights. And even though there's a lot of resistance, it's getting accepted that beating up on women, destroying something that's beautiful, right? Men have always been warriors. It is what it is. And here and there women too, but it was always kept down to a minimum. Now you're seeing these beautiful creatures destroying themselves, literally degenerating. And once LGBTQ get their way, it's going to be just men beating up on them. And I mean, this is where we headed, man. We're all degenerates, basically. Hope you liked the ramble. I got shit to do. Take it easy.